Hi guys, my name's Abby, and I'm going to be your narrator for this presentation. And here we are going to show you that the United States does have the right to torture suspected terrorists. Now, this presentation was produced by Jordan Entz, Josie Ramstetter, Lakisa Lopez, and myself. Okay, so we want to talk about a little bit about what torture is. Now, I know we've all probably seen torture through movies and the media, so many of us probably have an idea of what torture is. But let's start with a little bit of a background. So, torture is a successful method that has been used for centuries for the purpose of gathering information under the radar screen in desperate situations. Torture is illegal under both the United States and international law. It is considered hostis humani generis, an enemy of all mankind. It is thought to be one of the most heinous practices in human history, and its use is publicly condemned by nearly every government in existence today. Okay, so there's two categories of torture. One is punishment-based, and the other is preventing a greater evil. Punishment-based is the use of torture devices by tyrannies, dictatorships, and even some rogue states today. Punishment-based torture would be the kind we'd see in movies and museums, but this method is not the main issue. Now, preventing a greater evil, this method is implemented in part of the interrogation process, with the end goal being to receive information necessary to process or to prevent further attacks or threats. These type of methods have actually been used in history with success. A good example of this is a modern day example of this would be the Israeli experience. Israelis were facing threats from both hostile neighboring countries and international terrorist organizations. So, in order to withstand the threat of homicide bombings, the Israelis initiated torture tactics. So, there was an investigation of the interrogation practices of the Israeli General Security Service, and through the investigation, it was found that under the rule of necessity, the use of force in interrogation was used only if the interrogator reasonably believed that the lesser of evil was necessary to prevent the greater evil of losing innocent lives. And this was a temporary ruling for the foundation of legalized torture in Israel. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the different degrees of torture. When weighing the benefits of legalizing torture against preserving the status quo, it is essential to understand the differences in the degrees of torture. Torture in a legalized system would consist of a non-permanent act meant to maximize the possibility of gaining crucial information while minimizing necessary pain. A good example of this is brought up in Professor Alan Dershowitz' book "Why Terrorism Works." And unlike the current policy, the torture that people would be subjected to would be medically supervised and designed not to cause any permanent physical damage. One example he brings up of this is underneath the fingernail. This is intended to cause excruciating pain. However, it's not something that's going to be long-lasting or permanent damage to a human. So, by contrast, torture in rendition might utilize the mind-numbing tactics used against Abdul Hakim Murad in the Philippines, if not worse. The torturers in these situations are not accountable for any authority and seemingly would not hesitate to take the lives of uncooperative subjects. So, courts often use balancing tests to influence the direction of the law. The degree of torture used in the legalization proposal is therefore inherently more humane than the degree of torture practiced today. Okay, so torture is oftentimes seen under a different name. About 63% of Americans think that torturing suspected terrorists can be a justifiable way to get information. Now, we've included a link here if any of you would like to take a look at an article or to take a look at the article that we've linked for a little bit more information on that. Many potential subjects of torture are part of the conspiracy to destroy innocent Americans. And such methods have been used in the past with some success. For example, torture is used in extreme scenarios and the post 9/11 bombing. Okay, so President Ronald Reagan, during his farewell address from the presidency, he spoke of America as a shining city upon the Hill. Basically, he wanted to make a commitment to human rights and freedoms. With this approach, it has given the United States a powerful and respected voice in the world community. Now, legalizing torture would actually enhance the moral stature of the United States when juxtaposed against the current policy of underground torture. Okay, so Professor Alan Dershowitz, in his book, he brings up a little bit more information about about a torture warrant, and discusses basically what that is. This actually addresses the problem of terrorists who possess crucial information of any disastrous attack, but when they refuse to give up information to the captors. The concept of a torture warrant includes a process whereby a neutral magistrate would decide whether there was sufficient evidence to compel a suspect to be subjected to torture. The legalization of torture would promote respect for human dignity, and torture would be changed from an inhumane tool of oppression to a last resort tool for saving people's lives. So, after reading about the Dershowitz torture warrant, it says how a worldwide legalization of torture is not a negative event. Even in Professor Dershowitz's eyes, it can be seen as a something that can be regulated effectively. Now, this quote down here that we have, the legalization of torture is not a perfect solution, and it doubtless would have its downfalls. But as Professor Dershowitz observes, such is the nature of tragic choices in a complex world. Okay, so to conclude, even though there is no perfect solution the creation of a transparent and judicially monitored system on torture would mark a dramatic improvement over the current policy of ignorance. The dangers for abuse in the current system are truly boundless, and the practice of rendition often leaves the fate of suspects in the dangerous hand of acknowledged torturers. So, compared to the current policy of practicing torture under the radar screen, however, it may indeed be the lesser of two evils. Alrighty, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope everybody has a great evening.